I'm Jim Longworth, and welcome to a special edition of Triad Today. Over the next half hour, I'll be speaking with Governor Pat McCrory about a wide range of issues. But before we get started, here's a brief message from Bauer Clark Associates, who's helping to sponsor this special program.
Bauer Clark and Associates and SparkFlow Small Business Manager Software are pleased to sponsor this special edition of Triad Today, featuring an exclusive interview with Governor Pat McCrory. Bauer Clark consults with small business owners on strategic needs which are crucial for soundness and growth.
And SparkFlow provides owners with a fully customizable software solution to manage sales and customer service, which allows them to be competitive with larger companies. Together, we are proponents of small business growth, which is essential for a healthy economy.
Thanks, Scott and Jeff. We appreciate that. And now to our very special guest. We welcome back someone who has been here many, many times before, not as governor, but as mayor of Charlotte, as a candidate. We now welcome the Honorable Pat McCrory.
Oh, it's an honor to be back. Thanks for having me.
We're going to get to the, people know from seeing you on the show before, you and I disagree about a lot of things, but before we get into the tough questioning, I just have to tell you, you know that I'm about 100 years old, and I've been doing this for about 100 years. And literally, seriously, I've interviewed scores of governors around the different states. And I'm not trying to say this to flatter you, but you're the hardest working governor I've ever come into. Here's the first question before we get into the tough stuff. Do you get any sleep?
Very little, but I do have to stay rested. I've learned how to sleep in cars, and I learned how to take cat naps. But with the way things going right now in the economy and everything else, I just feel a sense of urgency in a short period of time to accomplish what we need to do. I mean, yesterday, this past week, I was in Mississippi. I then got off the plane, went and met with some energy executives there. Then I went immediately to a dinner with a big company that we're trying to recruit to North Carolina.
But also the thing, I'm not going to call any names, but in their past history of North Carolina, we've had governors who don't really get around to see North Carolinians, and you've been doing that too.
I had to get out. I get out of Raleigh at least 2 to 3 days a week.
Well, see, that's
because you get caught up in the bubble of seeing the same 100 people.
Right.
Every time. I don't care what profession you're in. If you work for a company, if you sit in your office and don't get out on the floor and see people, you're going to lose perspective about what's happening. And and I enjoy visiting all parts of North Carolina.
Well, I don't know how you do it, but I appreciate you being here and taking time. Now, during the government shutdown, there were about 70,000 children in our state that were depending on food that came indirectly from that federal program. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, the Department of Health and Human Services, look, we don't have the federal money coming in. We've got to cut out. We're not going to process any checks right away. And yet you and I talked about your rainy day fund, which is like $650 million. I think the monthly on the Work First thing is $5 million. Why couldn't the DHHS have said, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to let the rainy day fund kick in immediately?
Well, actually, some of that news reporting was incorrect. It was future things that we weren't going to do. But we literally had the money up till the end of October. So some of that was misreported by some of the critics. And what we did was say we're not going to sign up any new people after October or at the end of October. And the reason for that is we don't have any money budgeted. Now, if I steal from the rainy day fund for that, what happens if I have a Medicaid shortfall like we had last time? So we're having to make some tough decisions. But up and through October, I probably would have revisited that decision and determine, do we need to re-sign up?
And you've donated some money to food banks too.
Well, I didn't donate it. The taxpayers of North Carolina donated it. And what we did was literally take an advance of money that we give to food banks. We give approximately $2 million a year or so to food banks. I don't have the exact number with me. And what we did was we advanced about $300,000 early for the December years. But then we also got settlement money from the Attorney General's office to supplement that for the Christmas season holiday. So there's a cause and effect in everything we do. And then just this past week, I made a deal with Bill Haslam, the Tennessee governor, and I, who are very good friends. We're competitors for jobs, but we're former mayors together. He was in Knoxville, I was Charlotte. We called each other up and said, how can we get the Great Smoky Mountain Park opened up during the prime week of leaves? And we made a deal where he took 80% of the cost, and we took 20% of the cost based upon the percentage. So we're just making deals right and left.
That's what I think a lot of people don't realize, that you did 7 terms as mayor of Charlotte, and you compromised, and people voted for you, Republicans, Democrats, independents, black, white, young, old. And then some of them are saying, well, wait a minute, now that he's governor, there's these radical people in the General Assembly, these Tea Party people, and is he the same guy?
I haven't changed a bit. In fact, most of the major legislation I sought 6 major pieces of legislation. Let me mention 3 of them. Transportation reform. The current formula of what they call the equity formula, it's been around since 1989, was not equity, and it was not helping areas that had serious congestion or serious economic development needs. We changed that. No one gave us a chance. I think there were maybe 6 to 10 votes against it, period. It was bipartisan vote. Rural, urban areas all voted.
I didn't hear about it.
No, the newspapers, because it wasn't controversial. Because we explained our case, we went through committee hearings, and that is the biggest piece of reform in North Carolina in 25 years was transportation reform. You know how you see highways throughout North Carolina, they go from 8 lanes to 2 lanes to 8 lanes to 4 lanes. No rhyme and reason. And wherever it goes to 8 lanes, it's named after a DOT board member or a senator. You know, and that means
it's not funny.
No, that means it probably wasn't done the right way. We're trying to take the politics out of transportation. But you're right. The editorial pages, it was pretty complex stuff, but we got it done, and it was bipartisan.
Let me go back to benefits since we mentioned the thing about the children. Let me go to unemployed people. Here's something that riled up a lot of people, including me, and if I got it wrong, then correct me. We had 100,000 people waiting for extended unemployment benefits, 70,000 queued up waiting. That's a total of 170,000 North Carolinians. Either you or the General Assembly or one or the other or both said, look, we can't afford it, we've got to cut these off. How in the world did that make any economic sense? Because if those people were depending on that money to stay in their homes and buy food and goods and services, how did that help?
Well, these were for people who had been on unemployment for 90 weeks. And what the Obama administration offered us was this, offered me, was we'll extend you unemployment. By the way, that's not his money, it's a loan. We already owed the federal government $2.4 billion from the previous loan accepted during the Perdue administration. My previous administration, did not know how they were going to pay that back. So we increased taxes on businesses to pay the interest on that loan. Jeez. And businesses were having to actually lay people off to pay the interest on the $2.4 billion. So when the president offers an extension of unemployment, you and others say, well, why aren't you taking it? It's not, it's a loan. It's a loan in which he then requires repayment of that loan.
Why is it that when you explain things to me, I understand it?
Well, we've explained it to the front pages of the major newspapers, and they don't seem to want it put on because the critics don't tell the whole story. And I had this, by the way, even with that, it was a very difficult decision I had to make within the first 6 weeks of my office.
Right.
The other thing is we offered the Obama administration, President Obama, and I'm respectful of President Obama, he's our president, but we offered the chance to say, I tell you what, let us lower our unemployment compensation equal to what Tennessee, South Carolina, and Virginia are paying.
Right.
We have the ninth highest unemployment payments to people in the United States, the 9th highest. And we said, let us lower it and we'll take the extension so our debt won't continue. The administration said, no, we're not going to let you lower it. That basically made a decision for me because our debt would have gone to $3 billion.
Big numbers. We'll take a quick break and we're going to come right back.